every now and then on some of my favorite channels, maybe once a month, maybe once every 2 months, I come across a video that I can relate with. I don't like the videos that are trying to scare you, terrify you, because I don't believe in that, because there's no reason to be afraid of anything. Nothing will prosper against us as long as God has us in the palm of His hand. Turn the TV off. Turn your computers off, and all of this goes away. And this video is by a channel called Everything Inside Me. I think they have a Twitter account too, and I'll put their name down in the description. But remember, they're as close to heaven as they're ever going to get, and we're as close to hell as we're ever going to get. And that everything here it's all been done before. There's nothing new under the sun, and that's a true saying if there ever was one. All of this has already been done. They're digging up artifacts. This stuff's been done 10 to 12,000 years ago, except they were more smarter than we are, if you want to call it smart. But anyway, I don't want you to be afraid of of this transition that we're being forced into, and we are being forced into it. There's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to be afraid of. Just keep in prayer, and pray for your family. Talk to your family, your friends, and it's always good when there's two or more in presence, that the Spirit's right there with you. But anyway, you don't want to hear me babbling on. I'm sure you got better things to do. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I did. So y'all have a good day, and Roger's
that
out.
Cognitive dissonance is a feeling of discomfort that comes from holding two contradictory ideas at the same time. For example, in the movie Chicago, when a wife catches her husband in bed with two women, he insists that he is alone. "What do you mean?" she says. "I can see two women." His reply: "Believe what I tell you, not what you see." Naturally, the woman had cognitive dissonance. She also had a gun and resolved the contradiction by shooting her husband. Chicago is a revelation of the Illuminati method. They instruct us to believe what we are told instead of what our eyes, ears, and common sense tell us. The what we are told is a satanic spell cast by the Illuminati, a satanic cult led by Kabbalist Jews and Masons that controls most of our information, education, and so-called culture by funding an army of opportunists and dupes. As you know, this cult derives its power from the central banking cartel, which is using its monopoly over government credit to gain a monopoly over everything on Earth: wealth, power, mind, and spirit. Humanity is under a satanic spell that consists of lies and corruption, that is, deceit and decadence. The Illuminati, Freemasonry, has infiltrated and taken over most organizations. We are to occupy the lower ranks of their cult as servants and chattels. The TSA is conditioning the public to accept routine sexual abuse. The Illuminati began as a satanic Jewish heresy called the Sabbatians, which spread to half the Jews in Europe, including the Rothschild syndicate. They took over Freemasonry and subverted most nations by intermarrying and pretending to convert. The Illuminati spawned communism. Their aims and methods are identical. The end of freedom, marriage, family, inheritance, patriotism, and private property. They will own everything in the guise of the state. They are a satanic despotism that secretly rules the world, a cancer infecting society. They were behind both the Nazis and the communists, hiding their tracks by persecuting non-Sabbatian Jews. Thus, in World War II, they were able to destroy Germany and much of Europe and advanced their plan for central bank or world tyranny. Before I continue the video, please smash that like button for me. And don't forget to subscribe, and also click the notification bell too, so you won't miss any update. Thank you. The template of cognitive dissonance is where they replace God with Satan, light with darkness, by calling darkness light. This is the source of our cognitive dissonance, and it takes place all of the time. Thus, when it is obvious that the universe is governed by a magnificent creative power, and that following the inherent natural and moral design results in health and happiness, we are punished for espousing this view. We are told the universe is empty and chaotic. Why? Because the essence of the New World Order is replacing what is real with what is false. In other words, replacing God with the Kabbalistic central banker who is reorganizing the world according to his interests. When he is done, we will not remember the truth. This Illuminati banker is behind most wars and revolutions. He is behind the so-called Enlightenment, all designed to undermine and control humanity and enable him to supplant God. Humanism only deifies the Kabbalist banker. It debases humanity by stripping us of our connection to God. So there we have the template. Instead of acknowledging our Creator and His design so we may prosper, we are taught to deny His existence, defy His morality, and live in a dysfunctional solipsism in the name of freedom. Modernity is simply the Satanist's rejection of inherent order and purpose. It is the glorification of the alienated individual's dysfunction and reflects the Illuminati Jews' alienation from man and universe alike. Modernism eschews the universal in favor of the solipsistic and personal, because truth is universal. Our cognitive dissonance comes from the contrast between what God, common sense, instinct, intuition and our senses reveals, and what the paid liars and dupes of the Illuminati tell us to believe. I wasted much of my life because I listened to the banker's great men instead of myself. 9/11 afforded many such examples. We are told planes hit the Pentagon and Shanksville, PA. But there was no wreckage. We are told Larry Silverstein demolished WTC-7, but not the Twin Towers. WTC-7 was wired for demolition, but the Twin Towers weren't. 9/11's provided a pretext for a bogus war on terror, designed to strip us of our civil rights. The real terrorists are the central bankers, their politicians and mass media. They murdered over 3,000 people in broad daylight. Gender is a social construction, except when women act like men and vice versa. Women are stronger and better than men. Children don't need heterosexual role models. Women don't need husbands, children don't need fathers and mothers. Homosexuality was a developmental disorder until 1973, when the Rockefellers decided it was made to disorder marriage and family. Now our traitorous leaders and educators are imposing it on heterosexuals. Romantic love is the purpose of existence. Sex, especially with a beautiful woman, is the highest experience life has to offer. The more sex the better. All not true. We are really seeking God's love, which they took away. It goes on and on. Like residents in former communist countries, we need to discern the truth behind the deceptions of the government, mass media, or schools. The cognitive dissonance we experience is the difference between truth, or God, and lies, or the Illuminati's satanic spell. In the Protocols of Zion, the author repeats, our watchwords are force and make-believe. Deception only works on a credulous audience. We won't suffer cognitive dissonance if we understand our metaphysical and political predicament. I invite my viewer to send examples of, quote, believe what I tell you, not what you see, end quote. In Western society, personal success depends on your complicity in a diabolical Masonic conspiracy and your willingness to betray your fellow citizens. Here I review James Wardner's Unholy Alliances, 1996, the only book to expose Masonic control of US politics. What can we expect of government when most politicians belong to a satanic cult? We have already contrived to possess the minds of the Goy communities. They are looking through the spectacles we are setting astride their noses. Protocols of Zion 12. I devoured the second season of House of Cards like a box of chocolates. But I couldn't be bothered to watch the fifth season. Too much bullshit. Not a word about Freemasonry. Most Congress critters belong to this satanic secret society, but you can watch a series pretending to unveil Washington politics and not hear the word Freemason mentioned once. The show also avoids any mention of Jews and Zionist influence. Actually, there is one Masonic reference. The upside-down flag in the series logo is a Masonic sign of distress, perhaps a wink to people in the know. Search on Google how many congressmen are Freemasons, and you'll find practically no information. Just a story about the congressional stenographer who broke down in October 2013 and blurted about Freemasons and the devil controlling Congress. There's no reminder of the 2004 Bush-Kerry election, where both men confessed to being members of the Masonic Skull and Bones, but couldn't talk about it because it's a secret. No kidding. How gullible can people get? Both presidential candidates belong to a secret society. Nothing happening here. Move along, folks. The watchdogs of freedom, the mass media, didn't even tug on their leash. The pioneer on the subject of Masonic control is James Wardner in a 1996 book entitled Unholy Alliances. There has been nothing important written since. It's significant that Masonic power is kept quiet while Jewish power is trumpeted. Here are 10 facts about their control of Congress and the judiciary in the recent past. you can be sure that things have only gotten worse. 1. Wardner lists names of 75 congressmen who were Freemasons in the 1980s, but there were probably many more. These included both liberals and rednecks, indicating a House League: Bob Dole, Jesse Helms, Mark Hatfield, Lloyd Benson, Robert Burt and Arlen Specter. Presidents who were Freemasons: George Washington, James Monroe, Andrew Jackson, James Polk, James Buchanan, Andrew Johnson, James Garfield, William McKinley, Theodore Roosevelt, Howard Taft, Warren Harding, Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, LBJ, Gerald Ford, G.H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush and Barack Obama. Since Garfield was shot and Harding poisoned, apparently not all Masons understand that their function is to advance communism, in other words, Jewish banker world domination. 2. In 1987, Freemason and Senator Alan Simpson bragged that 41 members of the federal judiciary are presently Masons. 3. Masonic authority Henry Clausen boasted in the early 90s that Masons include 14 presidents and 18 vice presidents of the United States, a majority of the justices of the United States Supreme Court, of the governors of the states, of the members of the Senate, and a large percentage of congressmen. 5 chief justices of the United States were Masons, and 2 were Grand Masters. Wardner adds that these 2 Grand Masters were John Marshall and Earl Warren, who effectively ended prayer in schools. 4. This is nothing new, since Thaddeus Stevens, Pennsylvania's delegate to the 1830 Anti-Masonic Convention, noted that though but 100,000 of these people of the United States are Freemasons, yet almost all the office of high profit and high honor are filled with gentlemen of that institution. 5. Freemasons in Dwight Eisenhower's cabinet included the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of the Interior, Secretary of Commerce, and Ike's Chief of Staff, Sherman Adams. 6. Apart from President Truman himself, Masons include the Secretary of State, Commerce, Defense, Attorney General, and his 4 Supreme Court appointments. Truman said, "Although I hold the highest civil honor in the world, I have always regarded my rank and title as a past Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Missouri as the highest honor that has ever come to me." 7. FDR was an ardent Scottish Rite Mason. Masons in his cabinet included the Vice President, the Secretary of the Treasury, War, Commerce, Attorney General and 6 of his 8 Supreme Court appointments. No surprise that Empire State Mason boasted in February 1953 that if world Masonry ever comes into being, historians will give much credit to when FDR was president. 8. President Warren Harding, 1921 to 1923, was a Mason, and by 1923, 300 of the 435 members of the U.S. House of Representatives, 69%, and 30 of the 48 senators, 63%, were Freemasons. In 1929, 67% of Congress were Masons. 9. Leon de Ponsonby wrote that the First World War was contrived to create a Masonic superstate in the form of the League of Nations. The Treaty of Versailles deliberately led to revolutionary unrest in Germany, the Civil War in Spain, and finally to the Second World War. It is a frightening thought that an occult organization can direct the course of European politics without anyone being aware of the fact. 10. In 1834, a report to the Massachusetts legislature concluded that Freemasonry was a distinct independent government within our own government and beyond the control of the laws of the land by means of its secrecy and the oaths and regulations which its subjects are bound to obey. Wardner concludes that the tentacles of the Masonic Lodge pervade society. There are at least 160 different organizations that require its members to be Masons, including higher ranks of the U.S. military. In 1950, Masons estimated that nearly 10 million adults were directly linked to Freemasonry through the nation's 3 million Master Masons. Clearly, Freemasonry, Kabbalism, Satanism, is the secret religion of the West. This is the real party and we're not invited. We have to make do with an ersatz version of democracy, freedom and culture. No wonder vapid white men with pinched pussy faces run the country, no wonder people are so artificial and false, and we have constant scandal, corruption and war. Clearly, the whole Gentile establishment is complicit in the subversion of humanity. Anti-Semitism is a diversion. How many of the internet anti-Semites ever mention Freemasonry? Of course the Jewish leadership is also guilty. Almost all leadership is. How much easier for Freemasons to slough off the blame on ordinary Jews who are just as clueless as ordinary Gentiles. Clueless because they watch House of Cards and think it actually depicts political reality.